Okay, number one in the review, it says to verify each of the identities. We are going to be using our formulas from our orange paper. And so first you write the most complicated side. So I'm going to rewrite cotangent of x times secant of x times sine of x. Then I'm going to rewrite everything in terms of sine and cosine. Cotangent can be written as cosine of x over sine of x. Secant can be written 1 over cosine, and sine is already sine. And then we multiply. But we have cosine on the top, cosine on the bottom. That cancels. Sine with sine. And so I get 1. Letter B. Letter B says cosine squared minus sine squared equals 2 cosine squared minus 1. I'm going to copy this side, cosine squared of x minus sine squared of x. But before I continue and rewrite it, I'm going to write the formula I'm going to use on my right over here. I'm going to have cosine squared of x plus sine squared of x equal to 1. This is a Pythagorean identity. This is a Pythagorean identity. And so if you notice, there's no signs on the right side. There's no signs on the right side. So if I solve for sine, I have 1 minus cosine squared of x. Okay, so instead of sine, I'm going to write 1 minus cosine. So now I have cosine squared of x minus 1 minus cosine squared of x. I'm going to distribute the negatives, so then I have cosine squared of x minus 1 plus cosine squared of x. 1 cosine squared of x plus another cosine squared of x becomes 2 cosine squared of x minus 1, and that's where I wanted it to end. Okay, so this is letter C, sine of t times tan of t equals 1 minus cosine square of t over cosine of t. I'm going to copy again my right side, so sine of t, tangent of t. I'm going to rewrite tangent in terms of sine and cosine, so it'll be sine of t over cosine of t. We multiply. Sine times sine will give me sine square of t over cosine of t. From this previous one up here, I'm going to use it again. So instead of sine, I'm going to put 1 minus cosine squared. I'm going to change the variable because now I'm using t. And that's where I wanted it to end. Okay, letter D, we have two fractions on the left. And so I'm going to start with the fractions. I got cosine of x, 1 minus sine of x, plus 1 minus sine of x over cosine of x. Okay, we need to have common denominators. So I'm going to multiply this side times cosine. And I'm going to multiply this side with 1 minus sine of x. Okay, I need to distribute my numerators. I am not going to distribute the denominators. So cosine times cosine, cosine squared of x. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times sine, or minus sine, negative sine. Negative sine times 1, negative sine again. Negative sine times negative sine will be positive sine squared of x. Like I mentioned, I'm going to leave my denominator as it is. I am not going to distribute. Since I have common denominators, I can write it as one fraction. Next, cosine squared plus sine squared. Remember before? Cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. So these two is going to equal to 1. So I have 1 plus 1 minus sine of x minus sine of x. So let's put that together. Okay, 1 plus 1 will give me 2. Minus 2 sine of x. I'm just going to copy my denominator. From here, we can factor a 2, so I get 1 minus sine of x cosine of x1 minus sine of x. Same in the numerator and denominator, so I can cancel it out. Cosine of x, so I can rewrite it as 2 times 1 over cosine. And 1 over cosine is secant, so I'll get 2 secant of x, and that's where I wanted it to end. Okay, find the exact value. So then I have sine of 60 degrees minus 45 degrees. And so I go to my formulas again, and I found this one right here. So U will be my 60 and V will be my 45 degrees. Okay, so then I use a formula. I have sine of 60 degrees times cosine of 45 degrees minus cosine of 60 degrees times sine of 45 degrees. So then now I go to my unit circle, I go to 60 degrees, and I find the y value, which is square root of 3 over 2. I go to 45 degrees and find the x value, and it's square root of 2 over 2. Minus, I go to 60 degrees and find the x value, which is 1/2. I go to 45 degrees and I find the y value, square root of 2 over 2, and now I simplify. Square root of 3 times square root of 2, square root of 6. Minus 1 times the square root of 2 is square root of 2. 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, so I can combine them in one fraction, and that will be my answer. Letter B, cosine of 135 plus 30. Here when you have a plus, there's a minus in the middle. Okay, so be careful, use the formulas correctly. So U is my 135 and V is my 30. So let's plug it into the formula. I got cosine of 135 times cosine of 30 minus sine of 135 times sine of 30. Okay, so you go 135 and you find cosine, which is the x, which is negative square root of 2 over 2. Then you go to 30 and find the x value, square root of 3 over 2. Minus, you go to 135 and find the y value, which is square root of 2 over 2. You go to 30 degrees and find the y value, which is 1/2. So we have negative square root of 6 minus square root of 2. Again, the 2 times 2 is 4, the 2 times 2 is 4. So we have the same denominator, and that will be number 3. They only gave me the information that sine of theta equals 12 over 13, and the theta is in quadrant 2. So then I went ahead and did my little triangle. You find your missing side by using a squared plus b squared equals c squared, but since we're in quadrant 2, the x value is negative. Then you go to your lovely equations and you find sine of 2 theta, or 2u, which is going to be 2 sine of theta cosine of theta. And then you just plug in the numbers, okay? So we're going to do 2 times 12 over 13. Cosine of theta, we look at the triangle over here, and it's adjacent over hypotenuse. And we multiply, okay? So then it will give me 120 negative 120 over 169. So then I go and do the similar thing. In this case, cosine of 2 theta has 3 formulas. It does not matter which one you use. I'm just going to use the first one, okay? On this one, we are going to have cosine, which is negative 5 over 13 squared, minus, this one should be a minus. I am so sorry. That should be a minus. Minus 12 over 13 squared. So we have 25 over 169 minus 144 over 169. That is negative 119 over 169. For tangent. For tangent, remember that we can also write tangent as sine over cosine. I can use the formula they gave me there, but this is a little bit more complicated. So if I use this right here, remember sine over cosine, but since they're both fractions, I'm going to copy, change the other one, and flip it. Those two cancel, and my answer is 120 over 119, because negative over negative will make it a positive. So now let's go over our half angle. Half angle. So these are my two formulas. For sine is a minus, for cosine is a plus sign. So I'm going to have the square root of 1 minus cosine. Remember, cosine was negative 5 over 13. I have negative, and then I have negative 5 over 13. This is a 1. This is a 1. So if I want to add or subtract a 1, I want to have common denominators, so I'm going to make it 13 over 13. Negative and negative, I'm going to become a positive. So then here, the 2, I'm going to make it over a 1, so that right now I have a fraction over a fraction. Y in a little bit. So 13 plus 5 will give me 18. So now I have a fraction, and then if I copy, change, flip, I'll have this. I can simplify this way, so 18 divided by 2 will be 9. Then I can do the square root of 9 will be 3. And I still have the square root of 13 in the denominator because that didn't change. On this other case, I still have 13 over 13, but now it's a plus sign, but cosine is negative 5 over 13. Okay, so same, super similar. But now it's 13 minus 5. 13 minus 5 is 8. And if I copy, change, flip, 8 divided by 2 is 4. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So, like I did earlier, I can do sine over cosine. And if I do sine over cosine, I do copy, change, flip again. So I copy the first one, change it to multiplication, and we flip it. And when we do that, the square root of 13 is canceled, and I get 3 over 2. Number 4 says solve each equation on the interval given. So we're just looking at the unit circle. We don't have to add an n or anything like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add the 2 cosine on both sides. 7 cosine plus 2 cosine will give me 9 cosine of theta. This side will cancel, giving me a 0. Then I'm going to subtract the 9. So then I have 9 cosine of theta equal to negative 9. And then we are going to divide. So then I got cosine of theta equals to negative 1. You look at the unit circle, where is the x value? At what angle is the x value? Negative 1. And it only happens at pi. Okay, I'm not doing B or C. I'm not going to put them on the test because I didn't go over them. So I skipped to D. So in this case, I'm going to add a 3 because I'm solving for sine. So then I have 4 sine squared of x equal to positive 3. I'm going to divide the 4. So now I got sine squared of x equal to 3 over 4. To get rid of the squared, we're going to take a square root. But every time we take a square root, I need the plus and the minus. Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So now I'm looking at the unit circle, since I'm looking for sine, where the y value is positive and negative square root of 3 over 2. And it happens at 4 places. It happens at pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, and 5 pi over 3. And those 4 will be my solution.